My name is Laura Byron. I'm the Chief Executive Officer here at Broad Street Ministry. I'd like to thank the Philadelphia Association of Community Development Corporations, PACDC, and the supporting sponsors for organizing this event, this important opportunity to hear from the candidates that we have here with us tonight. The focus of tonight's forum, emphasizing affordable housing and equitable community development, are of course critically important to Broad Street Ministry. Our mission is to create connections and community, to restore hope and dignity, to support our guests toward greater security and self-sufficiency by offering radical hospitality. We believe that the quality of life in Philadelphia is improved when everyone has the resources they need to live with dignity, contribute to their community, and pursue their aspirations. PACDC values equity, collaboration, integrity, being impactful, and is passionate about Philadelphia. Those values and passions truly echo our approach to providing life-sustaining and critical resources to our guests impacted by deep poverty. In this room, we welcomed thousands of guests to dine last year on 69,714 meals. And downstairs, we host a mail service that is the mailing address for over 5,200 Philadelphians. There are more registered voters here than at any other single address in Philadelphia. It is our distinct pleasure to host this forum tonight. And now I'll introduce Rick Sauer, Executive Director of PACDC. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. Great turnout. We're excited about tonight's Candidates Forum to have an opportunity to dig in a little bit deeper around some affordable housing, community development issues, and hear directly from the candidates about how they can help us move forward Philadelphia in a way that's more equitable for all our residents and all our neighborhoods. Back in February, PACDC released our Equitable Development Policy Platform, which lays out a series of recommendations to advance equity and to address disparities experienced by Black, Latino, Asian, Indigenous, and other people of color here in the city, both between individuals but also between neighborhoods. And so the report lays out, or the policy platform lays out a series of recommendations to figure out how we can collectively advance equity together in the city. So we're real pleased tonight to have several of the mayoral candidates here with us so we can hear firsthand from them about how they plan to do that if elected mayor. And I also want to quickly thank or acknowledge the co-hosts for tonight's event. In addition to PACDC, Ceiba, Regional Housing Legal Services, the LISC Philadelphia, Urban Affairs Coalition, and the Urban League of Philadelphia have joined with us to plan tonight's event. And you'll be hearing from a couple of those later around questions they'll be asking. In addition, we had several additional outreach partners, in addition to Broad Street Ministry, which we're really thankful that they agreed to host us here tonight. The AARP, that's providing the closed captioning and refreshments, as well as Every Voice, Every Vote, the Fells Institute of Government, Habitat for Humanity Philadelphia, and the Housing Counseling Action Committee. And finally, we're very pleased to have with us Lorraine Ballard-Morrill, who is the award-winning Director of News and Community Affairs at iHeartMedia Philadelphia, as well as our moderator tonight. Under her leadership, Power 99 is the first station to receive a record-breaking 7 National Association of Broadcaster Crystal Radio Awards for community service. So they're really doing their part to engage the community around this, and most recently an award in 2022. I'm going to turn it over now to Lorraine to get it started for us, but thanks everyone for being here, and we look forward to an engaging evening.
Oh, it was your special touch, Rebecca. Thank you so much. Well, welcome to this Mayoral Forum on Affordable Housing and Community Development. I am so honored to be your host for today's event. The quality of life in our city depends on access to safe, affordable housing. It's not just about having a roof over your head. It's about having a stable home environment that supports our well-being, health, and economic opportunities. Today's forum is an opportunity for us to come together and engage in a meaningful dialogue about the critical issues facing our city's housing and community development. We will hear from mayoral candidates and learn about their plans and strategies to address the affordable housing crisis and community development in Philadelphia. Joining us are mayoral candidates Rebecca Reinhardt, Helen Gim, Alan Dom, and Judge James DeLeon. I will note that Sherelle Parker and Jeff Brown will not be here tonight, but they did have conversations one-on-one with PACD staff and board. So just to get an idea of what our rules are for today, we will be asking questions. I will be asking some, community members will be asking others. Each of you will have 1 minute to respond. There are some questions in which it'll just be 30 seconds. As you can see, there's a very excellent timer there, and at the end of that 1 minute or 30 seconds, a very loud gong will sound, so you will for sure know what your time is and when it's up. So let's begin by asking the first question. We're going to be asking a series of questions about the quality of life. But before we do that, actually, let's have each of the candidates for 1 minute just give an opening statement. So we'll begin with you, Rebecca.
Good evening, everyone. It's wonderful to be here. My name is Rebecca Reinhardt, and I'm running for mayor because I believe that I'm the right person to lead our city forward in this critical time. I know the city's budget inside and out from being the city's budget director. I've managed 1,000 employees as the chief administrative officer of the city and gotten things done. And as the city controller, I audited the departments, called out the issues, and laid out a path forward to fix the problems of our city. But that is where the power of my office ended. As mayor, I can and will make change happen so that our city government truly works for people in our city, to make our city safer, cleaner, to fix our schools. That's why I'm running for mayor, and I look forward to the conversation tonight. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Helen Gim. And Philadelphia's next mayor needs to lead a transformation in this city. While other candidates are running for an office, I'm actually trying to change the way people live. I've got a 20-year track record of delivering big solutions for communities that fix our schools, build stronger families and young people, and take on the status quo politics that have held Philadelphia back for so long. This is one thing that I know. Safe cities invest in people. And that's why I'm delivering a big agenda that talks about building and modernizing our schools as part of an economic development agenda. A guaranteed jobs plan for individuals who are most impacted by violence, and an equity-driven approach towards delivering city services so they actually transform neighborhoods and communities and build and prioritize affordability and long-term wealth. We have a choice in this next election about how we're going to move the city forward. From my end, I've never stopped fighting for communities and making sure that City Hall will work for the people.
I just want you to know I have a disadvantage. This is as far as my mic goes, okay? So I'm Alan Dom, and I'm running for mayor of the city of Philadelphia. And look, I'm running because the city has a public safety crisis. We have an affordable housing crisis, which we're going to talk about tonight. We have a low-paying jobs crisis. We have an education crisis and a poverty crisis. But I believe the biggest crisis we have is a crisis of leadership. The city needs strong leadership because these problems can be solved. And the city also needs a mayor, because this is a turning point election, who understands that there are a lot of smart people all over the city, in government, and all over the country that can help Philadelphia and have the ability to bring them to the table to help, including your organizations. So I'm running for mayor. I've spent 40 years in the private sector. almost 2 terms on council, and my goal is to bring people together to get the right results. And I look forward to our discussion tonight and hopefully earning your support. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jimmy DeLeon. I was a judge here in Philadelphia for 34 years. During those 34 years, I made decisions on a daily basis that saved your lives and the lives of those of your loved ones. I came into this race because I was tired of all the death in this city and the dysfunctional attitude of the city council and the mayor's office. I made a plan called the Local Incident Management System, which is a set of processes and procedures that I would use as mayor, that I would implement and have all the responders that are necessary to solve a problem come together to solve the problems of the city. It would be something that we have never had in the city of Philadelphia. At one time, I was general counsel of the Philadelphia Housing Authority, so I do know the issues about housing, and we'll have a great discussion on that tonight. Thank you.
All right, now to the questions. And we begin this series of questions on quality of life. The first question, understanding that neighborhood safety and cleanliness were the most frequent concerns we heard from our many constituents, what have you done already and/or what would you do beyond adding more police to advance safety and cleanliness, and what role do you see for CDCs in respect to your efforts? You have 1 minute to answer the question. We'll start with you, Rebecca Reinhardt.
Okay, so on the issue of gun violence, as city controller, I worked on this issue since 2019. It's not in the traditional purview of the controller's office to work on gun violence, but I felt it necessary for me to do that as a mom, as a resident, to stand up when so many of our kids across our city are dying. So I reported out on what works. I urged Mayor Kenny to do more. I stood with Councilmember Gautier in West Philadelphia, urging the mayor not only to declare a city emergency, but to urgently put resources into the neighborhoods that are most impacted by the violence. Library, rec, street lighting. As mayor, this is the way I will lead. I will open the Emergency Operations Center on day 1 to coordinate the city response, not just police, but other departments as well. I will lead in this way. Thank you.
So there's no surprise that gun violence is layered in the areas where we have traditionally seen huge amounts of neglect. Redlining, vacant lots, and city neglect that has left many communities behind. And as mayor, my mission is to change all of that, to transform the ways in which we deliver city services so it actually meets needs and is not just about equity and what we send out. As on city council, I helped a $30 million Just Services campaign with Councilmember Jamie Gautier that targeted cleanups and vacant lot sealing, towing of abandoned cars, and street lighting in the neighborhoods that are most impacted. And as mayor, I'm determined to finish that job. I want to make sure that we're sending out L&I to take on unscrupulous developers, that we are holding vacant lots accountable. We're going to deliver our city services so they actually transforms the ways in which people live. And we're going to make sure that we deliver that in a way that makes a difference in people's lives.
Thank you for the question. You know, this reminds me of my grandmother, may she rest in peace, used to say to me, cleanliness is next to godliness. And keeping the streets of the city clean and safe are really, really crucial, especially for public safety. But I've published a public safety, public services plan on my website, votedom.com, that starts with street cleaning in every neighborhood, picking up the trash on time with a trash tracker, filling potholes quickly, towing abandoned cars within 48 hours of being ticketed, replacing streetlights within 72 hours, basically doing the services that everyone expects to be delivered to them that we haven't been doing a very good job with. And I would love to engage CDCs to help me accomplish those goals. It doesn't have to be the city providing those services. If CDCs could help us provide those services, I think that would be unbelievably great. I'm also a big fan of the bids, and I would support the bids, not just with support, but financial also, as I would with the CDCs. So I think you guys are all a very important part of our city.
All right, Judge DeLeon.
So as a judge, there was a period of time when we had over 400 people being killed each year in homicide, and then I was appointed as the supervising judge. I led the initiative that reduced those homicides from 400 a year to down to 250 a year for 7 straight years. Now, of course, one life to lose is a life that we don't want to lose, but the fact still remains that I led the initiative that saved over 1,000 lives over a 7-year period of time. Now, as far as cleanliness of the city is concerned, Paul Levy from the Center City District came to see me one time, and he told me about the problems that they were having in the city with shoplifters and things like that that were leading to a lot of issues that the businesses had in Center City. So at that time, I set up a community court, and it was the first community court in Philadelphia, and it took care of those problems.
All right, the second question. While some neighborhoods have experienced extreme disruption due to the opioid epidemic, there are many advocating for an emphasis on harm reduction, which means trying to minimize the negative impacts, including injury and death, that those suffering may experience. Philadelphians will receive approximately $2 million over the next 18 years in the opioid crisis settlement funds. How would you approach planning to use these funds, and how much would you emphasize harm reduction policies that ensure we minimize the devastation of this epidemic? Do you see a housing and community development component in this plan? There's a lot to unpack in this question, but you have 1 minute. We'll start with Helen Gim.
Well, first, I would lead a public health first, community-led initiative to reclaim neighborhoods for neighbors, to make sure that we open up all of our vibrant civic spaces. And yes, we absolutely have to save lives. Harm reduction is one piece of a large spectrum of services that need to go into place, but it is not in lieu of, it is not precede or anything like that. To me, I'm leading a public health mission that looks at livability of neighborhoods through the eyes of young people. So I would absolutely make sure that we, first of all, help end the open-air drug markets. I am determined to get out crisis outreach teams so we can actually work and not criminalize addiction, but work to bring people inside and get them connected with housing and care. We're looking for new adaptive models of housing that is housing first, reduce barriers to entry and making sure that there are supportive services around it, and then reclaiming, reopening every civic space that we can to have neighbors feel like this is a place of vitality as well.
All right, Alan Dom.
I would utilize that money for setting up across the city 24-hour geographic locations for access centers, ground floor. These access centers would be for mental illness, for addiction, and homeless. They'd be staffed 24/7, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They'd be staffed with a psychologist, a social worker, and case management services. And in certain areas, if we needed security, we would have security available. But the key for this is for when people have this issue going on, for them to be able to come to the access center, for them to be assessed and then provided the right treatment, or be provided housing, short-term or long-term. The key is to help them, get them off the street and get them into the proper treatment. And that's how I would utilize that money. Thank you.
Judge DeLeon.
So under my local incident management plan, this particular situation would be taken care of in a 3-pronged process. The first prong would be to reduce the crime. Second prong, treat the people. Third prong, recover the neighborhood. So let's only deal, because of this question, with the first 2 prongs. Reduce the crime. That means we have to close the open-air drug markets. The way that's done is through coordination of city, state, and federal police officials working in tandem to clear that out. The second prong is treat the people. This is done by both brick and mortar and mobile units that would go into the neighborhood to talk with the people. They would bring the people in and we would triage them. We would look to see whether, first of all, we have shelter for them. The second part that we have is food and clothing for them. The third part that we have is that we're giving each of them the service they need to get themselves better.
Okay, Rebecca Reinhardt.
I've put forth a plan to tackle the opioid crisis, which involves both breaking up the open-air drug market and also providing compassionate care for those suffering from substance use disorder. Under my administration, I would utilize the city's $1 billion in behavioral health spending, the public health department, and homeless services to have outreach teams going out to people on the street to try to get them into treatment. And as the mayor, I would work to break down the silos in the city government. One thing I heard from talking to people working on the ground in Kensington is often when someone wants to get into treatment, it takes 2 to 3 weeks for a city spot to open up, which is unacceptable. As mayor, I would create rapid intake, working with the hospitals and area nonprofits and the community to get people into the treatment that they need. I also think supportive housing is needed as part of that. Thank you.
All right, our next question, which you'll have 30 seconds to answer. If we are working towards equity across the city, how would that impact your decisions in resource allocations to historically marginalized and under-resourced communities? Would you work to distribute resources more by need than by even distribution? Again, 30 seconds to answer this question. We begin with Alan Dom.
I believe your question is by need versus evenly across. Is that correct? Okay. It's definitely by need. Look, I've traveled the whole city. Sections of this city are in really bad shape, whether it's 52nd and Market or 60th and Market or Germantown below Erie by Max's Steaks or other areas of the city. We have real issues. I mean, that business corridor on Germantown below Erie on a Saturday afternoon, 80% vacancy, 80%. We have some real issues, so I would do it by need.
Right, Judge DeLeon?
When I go across Philadelphia, I look and I see vacant houses, I see vacant businesses, and to me, that means there's opportunity. There's opportunity for people to move into those houses. There's opportunity for people to move into those businesses because that's a need that needs to be filled. At one time, we used to give properties away for $1 in this city. We used to give businesses away for $1 in this city, the homes that these businesses were in. We need to go back to that.
Rebecca Reinhardt.
Equity means delivering service by need. As city controller, I did work around equity, showing inequities in service delivery, and also the connection between the areas of our city that have the highest gun violence and that are also the poorest were those that were redlined and starved of investment for decades and decades. And we need to correct that and be strategic and intentional with putting resources into the neighborhoods that need it most. And that's the way that I'll lead.
Kim.
So I've been very clear that the services that are allocated and the way things have been delivered has actually been very racist. I've been very clear that the overlap of the redlining, of the neglect that's happened, we can see it in it's not that city services are currently delivered equitably. Let's just make that clear. So we have to change everything about the way we do transformative investments in communities. To me, this is as much about what is just and right as much as it is about need. So I would absolutely deliver services based on need, and if that means some neighborhoods might see a shift, then that's how it's going to be.
All right. Our next question will be asked by PACDC's Rick Sawyer.
Hello? Yes. Well, I was trying to decide what to do. I'll look sideways. How about that? Philadelphia relies heavily on community-based organizations such as CDCs to meet the needs of residents, to ensure that residents have a voice at the table on decisions that are impacting their communities, and to perform a range of services. how would you ensure community-based organizations and partners of the city receive adequate, flexible funding to perform the range of services they're being asked to do by the city?
All right, let's start with Judge DeLeon.
So this is a situation that I've been thinking about over a period of time, and because it deals with housing, I'm going to bring this to you right now because this is a housing forum. Community Legal Service did a report, and that in 2022, there were over 22,000 illegal evictions here in Philadelphia. Now, there's a city ordinance called 9-16. Now, this means this is the illegal ordinance. This is where any landlord that evicts someone illegally has to pay a fine of at least $300, among other things. What I would do, if you look at this, if all 22,000 landlords' illegal evictions were charged $300, that times 12, that would be $66 million that I would use for the purpose of the CDC.
Rebecca Reinhardt.
The community organizations play a big role in the neighborhood development, in representing people across our city. And as mayor, I would make sure that they're funded appropriately. I think we need to have a conversation around what that looks like, and I would want to bring you in on May 17th, hopefully the day after I win, hopefully, to talk about that and to talk about how best to do that, and to bring you around the table and make that as strong as possible, a connection to fix the issues that are going on right now, and to make sure that you have the money and the resources available that are available so that you can best help the people in your community and work with the city to make a better city for all of us. Thank you.
All right. Helen Gim.
I've never seen anything happen in the city that has not worked without significant community engagement and without the partnership of CDCs, organizations, and community-based groups that have always held the city to a higher standard than any place else in City Hall. And it's one of the reasons why partnerships between organizations and some of my biggest efforts, including the eviction diversion work and rental assistance, housing counseling, and particularly guaranteed employment, has been transformative. I'm going to make sure that not only are our CDC partners supported, but that you're involved on the front end in terms of planning, in terms of evaluation, and in terms of ongoing visioning for neighborhood improvements and for transformation. I've had a central part of my work is around a guaranteed employment plan for young adults who are in some of the hardest hit neighborhoods and for young people who are at risk of violence. I hope that this is a direct partnership with many of our community-based organizations, because I don't want to see them working in the basement of Comcast. I want to see them transforming their neighborhoods.
All right. Alan Dom.
Thank you for the questions. Look, CDCs promote equitable development and affordable housing in the city of Philadelphia. I would have a cabinet of CDC's bids and some others that would meet 4 times a year, because I'm a big believer that there are a lot of smarter people in this city than sitting in the mayor's office. It's up to the mayor to coordinate and lead, but many of you have some great ideas. And I'll give you one example. I had a health issue. I reached out to 6 area hospitals on a Zoom, asked them to help me solve the problem. We had the issue with outdoor dining, or actually I should say the pandemic. In April of 2020, I coordinated 125 hotels and restaurants on a Zoom and asked them, what do you need? They said, we need outdoor dining, and we put the legislation through. It's important for us to seek out those who are smart in the field. But I'll also share with you that we need to revisit a lot of these business corridors and reinvigorate them. They're tired. They need to be probably shrunk and reimagined. And I'd be a big supporter of doing that. Thank you.
All right. Some of you may be noticing that white cards are being passed out, and that is for people in our audience, you all, to ask questions and write them down. If you don't have a card, then raise your hand and someone will bring a card to you. Affordable housing is among the top concern among voters. Housing affordability is right up there. So let's dive into that. And to ask our next question, we have Regional Housing Legal Services, Dina Schlossberg.
Thank everybody for coming tonight, and especially thank you to all of our candidates for all of your time and deep thinking. So affordable housing is a very, very important issue. Wages have not been rising as fast as rent, which means making ends meet is more and more out of reach for more and more low-income neighbors, like a parent who makes less than $23,000 to support themselves and their 2 children. What would you do to increase the number of housing opportunities for our most vulnerable members of our community?
Let's begin with Rebecca Reinhardt.
I've put forth a housing policy and housing plan on my website, rebeccaforphiladelphia.com. What I would do, the first thing I would do, would be to utilize the city-owned 8,500 vacant properties and lots. These are city-owned, and I would utilize these to create a city-wide affordable housing plan, working in conjunction with individual council members to create a citywide plan where there is deeply affordable housing in every neighborhood in our city. The city should not be holding these blighted properties. We need to transform them into affordable housing. In addition, I will help with rent in areas with rising rents because of gentrification. I think that we need to put more money towards rent subsidy. And also, I have programs that the city offers for homeowners to keep homeowners in their houses.
Helen Gim.
Yes, I think affordability is purposeful, and this is one of the clearest areas where you need a mayor who is going to lead a mission to use all available resources at their disposal in order to counterbalance a market that's frankly out of control. It's one of the main reasons why I helped lead the phasing out of the 10-year tax abatement for large brand new construction and primarily for wealthy newcomers and larger developments. It's my belief that we need to create a new subsidy that prioritizes affordable housing, that utilizes, as has been said before, the 8,500 vacant lots that are currently under city control, that we transform our land bank as well. But I have also been one of the few council members who is up here who believes that forms of rent stabilization has to be on the table as well. We cannot subsidy our way out of this. I am somebody who led on rent assistance, and believe me, if I thought rent assistance could do it all, I would do it. But vouchers are not enough. We're gonna have to have a serious conversation about how to keep rent stable and affordable.
All right. Alan Dom.
Thank you for that question. Number one, I want everyone to understand the top 50 cities in the United States, we have some of the most affordable housing. But of the top 50 cities in the United States, we have some of the lowest average income. So we have right now an income issue and a housing issue. We have to deal with the housing issue, but our real goal should be how do we create better paying jobs in the city? Because in the last 10 years or so, all jobs in the US that were created that paid less than $35,000, the national average was 29%. In Philadelphia, it was 60.5, double. So for short term, we need to make sure that people are aware of all the programs available, the city programs, the federal programs. Last year, we left $100 million on the table in earned income tax credit dollars to 35,000 families who did not apply. I passed a wage tax bill that 60,000 families can get refunds of $800 to $1,000, affects 200,000 people. Last year, 2,500 applied. We need to do a better job in getting that word out.
Judge DeLeon.
So the situation is one of supply and demand. So we're going to have to increase the supply. What happened was they tore down these houses and they put them in the land bank because they wanted to increase the demand, and that made the developers money. So we have to turn this situation around. Now, what we have to remember is that Philadelphia was a factory city, and because it was a factory city, that meant that there were single-family homes where the families lived in that went to the factories. So what we have to do, now that they tore those houses down, we have to now go into the zoning. We have to change our zoning from single-family zonings to multiple-family zonings. Then I would have, in my administration, the city planners, they would put a plan together where we would have affordable housing, apartments. We would then also have green space, because green space is also needed for our tranquility.
All right. Our next question will be asked by Andy Frischkoff from LISC, Philadelphia.
Thank you. Several of you touched on the need for more subsidies for affordable housing. Many of our current publicly subsidized units of affordable rental housing are only guaranteed to be affordable until their current restrictions run out after a certain number of years. We are now at risk of losing the affordability on thousands of these units over the next few years. What would you do to ensure that we don't lose these reliable and affordable homes at the time that our residents need them the most?
All right. We'll begin with Helen Gim.
I want to thank all the folks who've been so vocal and active about preserving affordable housing, and especially thanks to Councilmember Jamie Gauthier, who showed what's possible when city government backs up the rights of people to stay in the place that they call home. I believe that the next mayor has to lead a big initiative to map out what the federal roll-offs are going to be, to activate immediately a conversation with our state and federal partners to keep and maintain permanent affordability. But I also believe we need something more. We have to hang on to every single affordable housing that we currently have, but we also need to expand. And so part of the work that we do is by bringing in financial partners, big banks, financial institutions, CDFIs, and other lending institutions, philanthropic partners, and others to try and create a market and a real investment using the citywide affordability plan. We need to see opportunity in the next decade and not just fear.
All right. Alan Dom.
You know, the issue here is who's responsible for this cost. Is it the landlord or the property owner, or is it the city of Philadelphia? In my opinion, it's the city of Philadelphia. And we should figure out with other property owners how we can extend those contracts so they don't expire. And we should probably be doing that now. And whether that's through some sort of a payment from the city to extend the contract, or a technique called a buy down of the loan if their loan's coming due, where you can buy the interest rate down to make it more affordable. We should look at all those practices. In fact, when I was in council in April, the city came out with a program for first-time home buyers. We were going to give people a $75,000 soft second mortgage. I showed them through a buy down, we could actually have a lower payment by doing the buy down and costing us 1/5 of the cost. So where you buy the interest rate down to a lower level to make it more affordable. We should use that tool for all the affordable housing that we have that's expiring.
Judge DeLeon.
So the first thing I would do as mayor is that I would put a moratorium on that would not just go away, such as it's being asked to go away. The second situation is that at this time, remember what I said that I'm having my city planners doing. I need to keep that going on at the same time I'm increasing my supply of housing. So once I get that supply of housing up, then we can do this across the board even more than we're doing right now, because I will have more affordable housing in Philadelphia, and it will look like what was here back like 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago, because that's what we need. We need more houses so that we can reduce the cost of people moving in. Thank you.
Rebecca Reinhardt.
So as mayor, I would convene stakeholders, PHA, community leaders, and city officials, as well as the Biden administration, because the solution to the problem of the looming federal subsidies expiring is a big issue that needs to be handled at the federal level. So as the mayor, I would work to advocate and push for that so that we can continue those subsidized units, because there's thousands and thousands expiring. And as a city, we have a responsibility to keep housing units affordable. In addition, I would make sure that, as I mentioned earlier, the 8,500 city-owned properties were being turned into deeply affordable housing units and homes that were subsidized by the city government. I think we could create a subsidy program there. Thank you.
All right. Our next question will be asked by Abraham Pardo from the Urban League of Philadelphia. You'll have 1 minute to answer the question.
Hi. Good evening, everyone. So the homeownership rates between white versus black and Latino households in Philadelphia have continued to widen. What would you do to increase opportunities for first-time black and Latino home buyers to purchase their homes? And what role do you see community-based nonprofits like CDCs and housing counseling agency playing in this effort?
All right, we'll start with Judge DeLeon.
What was that last part?
Yeah, sure.
Oh. Alan? Okay.
Is that okay?
It is Alan.
You wanted to answer
What, you had to
He's
clarify.
asking about the, So, to purchase their homes, and what role do you see community-based nonprofits like CDCs and housing counseling agencies playing in this effort?
All right, actually, Alan Dom.
Thank you for the question. First of all, facts are simple. 90 to 95% of the wealth in the United States are in people's homes. It is so important to advance home ownership across the board. Also is a big factor in generational wealth. The actual wealth of a tenant is $4,000 to $6,000. The wealth of a homeowner is $200,000. Many entrepreneurs start their business through a home equity loan by owning their home. It's a great way to start a business, and it's a great way to build generational wealth. I want to go back to what I mentioned earlier. I would work with CDCs and others and utilize the buy-down program. When I mentioned this in council in April, people had no idea what I was talking about until about in November I received an email from someone in President Clark's office saying, hey, Alan, you were ahead of the time. This is being used across the country, where there's two ways to affect value: lower the price or buy down the rate of financing. It's much more efficient to offer lower rates so people can buy homes.
Judge DeLeon.
So this comes back to what I had just mentioned a little while ago as far as the housing in the city. And it also goes with what Rebecca was mentioning a little while ago when she said that there were 8,500 houses here in the city that are vacant. Now, if we have black and brown people that need housing, then this is a great possibility and for them to have a house. All we need to do is just give them the necessary components they need to build this house up. What that means is we'll give them the first homeowner loans. We'll give them everything that the federal government has for a first home buyer situation, where they can use that money to fix that house up. But we have to have them give that they're going to be there for a period of time. We don't want them just to fix the house up and then turn the house over to a developer where they reap the benefits of just having had that house for 2 to 3 years, and then all of a sudden they've made a lot of money off it.
All right, Rebecca Reinhardt.
So as mayor, my administration will make a very intentional and strategic effort to increase black home ownership. And we need to be intentional and specific about it, because the reason that the rates are so different between black and white home ownership is because of the racist policies that have denied black and brown people home equity and the right to own their own home for decades. So that will be a big priority. In addition, under my administration, I will focus in on the tangled title issue. This issue, which prevents so many people from building that equity in their own home, the home that their family and their grandparents lived in, it's their home. So as a city government, we need to help untangle that title so that that equity and wealth goes to the person living there. Thank you.
Helen Gim.
So Abraham and Urban League, I just want to thank everybody in this room who has been so phenomenal on the housing counselors issue. It's been my big pride to have really invested tremendously in housing counseling, because I see what a huge difference it makes in terms of eviction diversion, in terms of helping people apply for the first-time home buyer program through the city government. And one other area that I think is really key that needs to be discussed in terms of access to home ownership, I want to clear civil debt. As much as I learned about eviction diversion, civil debt court is 10 times more people and 10 times worse in terms of the damage, but so much easier for us to do. People are going into debt for pennies on the dollar that's being given to these broad agencies that have absolutely no proof. We can clear civil debt with a partnership of our attorneys and with our housing counselors that can help people find the stable funding and credit sources that they need. I'm going to make sure that every property is permanently affordable. Every piece of land is not going over to be turned over to developers to be sold. It will remain permanently affordable for 100 years.
Okay. All right, let's see if I can, you want these questions now? Yes? Okay, we've got questions from the audience. Hopefully I can read your writing. Many neighborhoods in our city are riddled with vacant properties, and there's a need of newfound investment and development. Many residents in these neighborhoods are also justifiably concerned about the displacing effect of new development. As mayor, what would you do to ensure an equitable development occurs without leading to potential displacement of existing residents? That's a great, great question. All right, we begin with Judge DeLeon.
So I hope everyone realizes that there is an issue in South Philadelphia specifically with what's known as the Act 135 conservators. I fight these people on a daily basis. The situation is that they're supposed to be CDCs, where they go and they look at properties, and what they're supposed to do is tell the resident of the property if they see something wrong, where they can go to fix it up. But what they've turned it into is that when they see something wrong with the property, they sue the people. Now, when they sue the people, they have to go to court, and most of the time these people don't have the means in order to fight the suit the way they should fight it. So what the conservators do, they make a deal with them where they'll purchase the property for a small amount of money, maybe even $100,000, and then they'll turn that property over to a developer, and the developer will sell that property for over $350,000. I fight those people tooth and nails. That's the problem.
All right, Rebecca Reinhardt.
We need to make sure, as development is occurring, that communities are kept intact. And that's not happening right now. So as part of my housing plan on my website, I put forth that, one, we need to make sure that people can afford the rent and not be pushed out of their long-term neighborhood. And the way I propose to do that is through rent subsidy. And utilizing rent subsidy out of the funding that the city has from MPI money and possibly other sources of funds. In addition, we need to keep people in their homes that are homeowners. And property taxes have gone up a lot recently. And we need to make sure longtime homeowners are protected. The city has programs, the Longtime Owner Occupied Program, the Senior Tax Freeze, but people don't know about them. And as mayor, I would make sure that there is a big effort knocking door to door, making sure people know how to get enrolled in these programs. Thank you.
All right, Helen Gim.
The situation around vacant lots is one very good example of why there needs to be purposeful planning from the mayor's end. It needs to be seen as citywide and with something that is done deliberately. I think it's been said already that there's no reason, there's a lot of approaches towards vacant lots that's just about sealing them and doing all of that, and I absolutely believe that. I definitely intend to send out our licenses and inspections team to be a much more active entity around unscrupulous development and developers taking on the vacant lots. But we can also have the city fix them up as well and hold these vacant lot owners accountable for the devastation that's being caused. I want to see not all lots turned into housing. Lots should remain diverse and transformative. They can be turned into green spaces. I want to make sure that community gardens thrive here in the city and that there's creative open spaces for arts and other types of things for communities. But I believe that this has to be a purposeful personal effort
All right.
and creatively led.
Okay. Alan Dom.
Thank you for the question. There needs to be a centralized system. I'm going to use Benefits Data Trust, United Way, or Campaign for Working Families, where people know where to go to find out all the different benefits that are available. There's so many different benefits. We probably can tell you every one of them. It's so crazy. There needs to be one central source. I happen to like BDT, United Way, and Campaign for Working Families, but we need one source to help people to stay in their homes. Number two, I just want to mention, besides vacant lots, we have a problem in the city with these signs on telephone poles called Cash for Your Home, We Buy Your House. You've probably seen all these. And I just want to commend CLS, who worked with me while I was in council, to pass the Wholesalers Protection Bill, where we license these wholesalers who are ripping wealth out of people's homes. You know, buying them for 30, painting them and selling them for 90, where now the wholesalers have to be licensed, have a code of ethics, provide the homeowner with a source to find the value.
All right, we have another question from the audience. Do you think landlords should be able to raise rents as much as they want, not as much as they want, not need, year after year, while Philadelphians are struggling to make ends meet? All right, let's begin with Rebecca Reinhardt.
I think we have to make sure that people can afford rent in neighborhoods across our city. That's why I have supported rent subsidy and think that the government could put a much more intentional and increase the amount out of the Neighborhood Preservation Initiative money that we're giving to assist people with paying rent in neighborhoods where the rents are rising. Community is the base of a healthy neighborhood. If we can't keep community together, the city's not going to thrive. So it's going to be a very big priority of mine to keep people in their place of where the neighborhood of where they're living. Thank you.
All right. Helen Gim.
Philadelphia is a city where 400,000 people live in poverty and where the average rent is around $1,600 across the city on average. And that is a serious issue. I've made it clear that viable options should be on the table when it comes to rent stabilization and about how to keep rents affordable. I do not believe that they can be unilaterally imposed. I think this is going to be a conversation that involves a large group of stakeholders. But I did this as well when we were talking about eviction prevention work that took over 5 years. We were able to slash the number of evictions by almost 70% during the pandemic and keep 50,000 people housed and deliver almost $250 million out to small landlords. This is a conversation that we shouldn't fear. This is a conversation that involves all the people in this room and those far beyond it. But there should be a conversation about how to stabilize rents in different ways that are unique and not just harking back to the fearful past, but something that leads us forward and gives everybody in the city a chance to call it home.
All right. Alan Dom.
So when I was 12 years old, my brother was 16, we lived in a small apartment, 800 square feet. And we were evicted because we had no hot water for 2 weeks. So I know what eviction's like, and I know what it's like not having a roof over your head. They gave us a 30-day notice to move. And so everyone should have a roof over their head. The responsibility should be the city, not the landlord. 90% of our landlords in Philadelphia are mom and pop. California's like 35 to 40%. We're mom and pop, individual people. And also, here's the other issue that we really have to think of. We have a tremendously high level of poverty in the city. We have a lot of programs that keep people comfortable in poverty. But our goal should really be, how do we take people out of poverty? And that's what we should be focused on.
All right, let's go to Judge DeLeon.
So, as a judge, I made sure that these landlords were under control. I made sure that they weren't putting people out of the house just because they wanted to raise the rent. That's not the way that we do things here, okay? You made a deal for the person to be there. If you saw me in court, then you know that I was on the side of the tenant. Okay? It's just that simple. I was on the side of the tenant when I was with the Philadelphia Housing Authority. That's the reason why I'm a judge right now. It was the tenants at the Philadelphia Housing Authority that backed me to become a judge. Okay? I'm not owed to no one. I am owed only to the people of the city. And I want to make sure that everybody in the city has a roof over their head and they're not paying any high rents to do it. And I'm going to make sure that you have subsidies if we need to give you subsidies. And just like I told you earlier, we will find the landlords that $300 every single day that they...
Okay. All right. All right. All right. Okay. All right. I think that point was beautifully and powerfully made. So we'll continue with our questions. And let's see what we have here. It really sounds like all of you in the same books as far as the issues and direction. Let's see. I can't read this, so I'm going to move on to this one. All right. How do you intend to expand affordable housing into neighborhoods that are traditionally seen as NIMBY, not in my backyard? So let's begin with Helen Gim. All right, ma'am. All right, let's let our candidates answer the question. All right. Okay. To repeat the question, how do you intend to expand affordable housing into neighborhoods that are traditionally seen as not in my backyard? Helen.
So I think, this is obviously something that has to be led with a community-led vision about what affordability looks like. We're going to have, we've led on different levels of focusing in on certain areas of the city, transit overlay zones, where you can do more multifamily development, where we can have broader conversations about where we can utilize some of our city-owned lots to be able to support multifamily developments and other types of diversification. So it's not just about scarcity. The problem in our city with affordability has a lot to do with scarcity. And my other investment is to make sure that the most affordable place where you can live is the home that you're actually already in. And so we're going to make sure that we lean in on supporting the Whole Homes Repairs Act. We take it to a different level by leaning in on inflation reduction, built to last, so we can actually improve the climate of people's homes as well as their affordability.
All right, let's go to Alan Dom.
Could you repeat that question just again, because there was a little distractions.
How do you intend to expand affordable housing into neighborhoods that are traditionally seen as NIMBY, not in my backyard?
So I think you need to provide the incentives in those neighborhoods. It might be even the city providing the expense to buy down the loans, but we need to...
All right.
Yeah.
Ma'am, we ask that you respect the candidate's ability to answer the question.
So I would say in those areas we need to utilize what I spoke about. Are you good? I think we need to utilize the buy down in those neighborhoods where we can.
Ma'am, ma'am, ma'am. Ma'am, 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 madam, madam, ma'am, we respect your opinion, but we also ask that you allow our candidates to answer the questions. Ma'am, ma'am, we ask that you respect the candidate's ability to answer the question.
Y'all gonna keep answering the same Roku questions and never get to this. You'll never get to this. So I've decided I have to come down here tonight and say this to you all. Please check it out. If you give me a thumbs up that you will check this out, then I will go outside. Tell me you'll check it out. Tell me you'll check it out. Tell me you'll check it out.
All right. Okay. Ma'am, we will check that out.
They all know me very well.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. We appreciate you. We appreciate you. We appreciate you, ma'am. Ma'am,
Who voted on that bill?
thank you.
Who voted on that bill? Who voted on that bill?
All right.
Who voted on that bill? Who voted on that bill?
Thank you. All right. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Okay?
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. Let's give her a round of applause, all right? Appreciate freedom of speech. It's a beautiful thing. Thank you so much. We do appreciate you. All right. Now, Alan, would you answer the question?
Thank you very much for that question. Let me just address for a moment what the issues were and why CLS brought that bill that Ms. Robinson was referring to. We had generational wealth being ripped out of people across the city. Unscrupulous wholesalers who were taking advantage of our residents and buying homes for $30,000 that were worth $80,000 or $90,000 without their knowledge, painting them and reselling them. That bill, when I worked with CLS, was a great bill that we put together with CLS that called for
No, we will. Thank you. All right. You know what? Let's pause for a second, ma'am. Ma'am, we're gonna ask that question. Can you ask the question? No. Yeah. Would you ask the question, because I think that has to be addressed.
Sorry.
Yeah. No.
I got a real estate license working for my father.
Go to the microphone over there. What's the question? What is the question?
Realtor in Strawberry Mansion, so I know our concern. There was a really good bill about wholesaling. It was a great bill. Thank you both for your support of it. And there's been absolutely no enforcement. I have gone to every single city council office and asked about it. None of the constituent service people want to do outreach. I have sent lists of homes, because I'm a realtor.
And what does the bill do?
The bill says if you're a wholesaler, you have to register with the city.
Mm-hmm.
You have to abide by certain practices. You have to provide notices to the homeowners. And everyone seemed very satisfied that the bill was passed. It's a great bill if it were only enforced.
Okay.
And the answer I got from council offices was, oh, it's L&I. Well, then it turns out, I've talked to other people in housing, it's actually the Human Relations Commission that enforces it, not L&I. So the council office I went to didn't even understand how the bill they passed would be enforced.
All right, so stop there.
Meanwhile,
Stop
every
there.
month, dozens of homes are still being taken by wholesalers.
Gotcha.
Homeowners aren't giving the notice, and no one's checking to see how that works.
That's a great question. We're going to throw the procedure into the winds for now and have our candidates answer that question. And just let's go continue and forget the other question. Alan, answer that one. All the rules are out the door. No, thank you for the question. This is what this is about. This is democracy. This is freedom of speech, and we love the fact that we have you asking those questions, because these questions have to be answered. So thank you for that. Now, let's get our candidates to answer that question. Alan.
I think the question is, we passed a bill that was a very good bill. That's the job of the legislative branch. The job to administer it is the executive branch. And a lot of frustration by me and other people running for office is the lack of the executive branch providing the leadership to make this happen. And we can't control that. You know, excuse me? It's Mayor Jim Kenney. But look, let's be respectful to everybody. And look, we thought it was a great bill. We passed it. CLS, I thought, did a great job. And we just need to make sure it's enacted. That's why I'm running for mayor. Everyone on council felt the same way with a lot of bills they passed that weren't enforced. But council's not the enforcing agent. You want me to get back to the original question?
Skip that question.
Okay.
Let's go on to. Are you done with answering that question? Yes. Okay. Then Judge DeLeon.
It's me. No, yeah, it's me. So housing, as we see, is a very volatile issue. I remember when I was at the Housing Authority and Milton and John Street would lead their marches up to the Housing Authority, and I would always get a phone call that said, Jimmy, we're coming. So that meant that I would get out of the building because I knew it was going to be volatile. So, but as mayor, this is the type of situation that a mayor wants. Because a mayor should hear from the citizens as to what are the issues that they're facing. Because a mayor has to have his finger on the pulse of the people in order to give them the services that they need in order for the city to grow. So if this situation is a situation where a bill like this that was supposed to be so positive died on the executive's desk, then I, as mayor, would raise that bill up and pass that bill so that it would make the constituents of the city happy.
All right, Rebecca Reinhardt.
So it is the job of the mayor's administration to enact legislation passed by city council and signed by the mayor. So the fact that the wholesale bill is not being enforced, the responsibility of that lies on the current mayor. There are issues with a lot of things being enforced right now, from this bill to illegal dumping to a whole range of issues. As mayor, I will make sure that this bill is enforced and that we have strong enforcement on a variety of bills that city council has passed that are not being enforced right now, so that we have a system and a society that's fairly working for everyone here. Thank you.
All right, Helen Gim.
I'm going to take a little bit of a different approach, because I actually believe that one of the reasons why I'm running for mayor is that I actually did follow all my bills through. Enacting an eviction diversion law that required me to pull together the courts, multiple different stakeholders, landlord associations, lobbyists. If I had left that to the mayor's office, I knew it wasn't going to happen. I had to prove that you could make this work. And that's what I did. I actually thought through how you're going to execute on something when everything in city government doesn't work. We are dreaming in this room. If you think the difference about someone coming in and changing the city is just by sitting in that office, the problems in the city are not because someone, including each one of us who wants to be mayor, are not sitting in the mayor's office. The problem is because people fail time and time again to pull all the different entities together, to leverage in, and I didn't need to be the mayor to be able to do that. I am here to prove that you have to think this stuff through when you introduce a bill, how you're going to manage these agencies, how you're going to lead and inspire people from the ground.
All
That's
right.
why I think that I'll be a mayor that makes the difference and not just one who talks about it.
Okay, all right. Okay, let's move on to vacancy and blight. Thinking of fun topics here. Thinking about the housing issues we just discussed, Philadelphia has a lot of vacant land out there that could go towards housing or other community needs. What is your vision of a properly functioning land bank, and how do you plan to make that a reality? And I've a little bit lost my place here, but let's start with Judge DeLeon.
So a lot of these questions, they kind of like overlap with some of the answers from before. Now, when we're talking about a land bank, this is where that city planner comes in, because the fact is that we have to utilize the land in the land bank for the benefit of the citizens of Philadelphia. This is where we were talking about earlier, the situation of supply and demand, that we have to increase the supply in order to reduce the demand. So what we're doing here with the city planners is that we're making a plan where we can have affordable housing both as single-family dwellings and as multiple-family dwellings. And we're also giving enough land that it would make green space so that we would have parks already made within the developments that we make, so that the people would have a way to keep their aesthetics in line with their feelings.
All right, Rebecca Reinhardt.
So we need to be very thoughtful about the way we're using vacant land. I've put forth a plan on how we should be using the city-owned vacant properties and lots, but there's many vacant properties across our city. We need to be very thoughtful. That's why I propose putting forth a citywide housing plan. And we also need to look at other uses. We need to make sure that there's green space in every neighborhood. We need to look at the arts in terms of where the arts can be displayed in vacant land. We need to look at holistically what can be done to beautify the neighborhoods and vacant property within a neighborhood. So I plan to look at this in a very holistic fashion and set forth a plan that builds upon both affordable housing as well as green space across our neighborhoods.
All right, Helen Kim.
So as somebody who followed the land bank from its inception to where it is today, believe me, I know the pain of seeing a visionary idea that needs to come to fruition. To me, it starts with transparency. Like, honestly, nobody really knows what's happening within the land bank. There's nothing publicly accountable or available. There is a completely obscure application system. There's no form of accountability. I do believe that there is a chance, even within difficult systems, there is a chance that when there's a tremendous amount of transparency, when we can see public accountability, when there's mapping of communities, that actually that has a profound impact on how to change things internally. Sometimes when these things are hidden away, nobody really changes their behaviors. When they become public to everybody, everybody holds each one of us accountable. So I absolutely will start with transparency. I want to lean in with partnerships with communities to make sure that there's accountability on the back end to hold these, to make sure that it actually goes into productive use as well.
All right. Land Bank, Alan Dom, go.
Thank you for that question. Look, the land bank performance has been dismal. I think last year we sold less than 300 properties, and less than 30 were for 30% AMI. That's a disgrace. I will say that Councilmember Squill is doing a pretty good job disposing of his properties in his district, but at one point a few years ago, I remember seeing a cost estimate of maintaining these properties. This was maybe 5-6 years ago. It was costing us around $15,000 to $20 million, maintaining all these vacant properties and vacant buildings. And why we're doing this, I have no idea, because we should be really utilizing it for what's needed most, and that is affordable housing at the 30% AMI and other levels. That should all be leveraged into nonprofits developing it and others to get that land off our books, to get those buildings off our books, and make them usable for affordable housing. We have the tool to do it. We should be utilizing it. Sitting on it is costing us money. It's kind of crazy. And then we could turn it into housing for people across the city.
All right. Our next question will be asked by one of our community partners, Julian Rios from Ceiba.
All right, there it is. All right, thank you for being here tonight. Nonprofit developers need a flexible acquisition fund so that we can repurpose properties for the benefit of our communities. We need such a fund to be able to better compete with out-of-town investors and speculators who are buying up properties in our neighborhoods. As mayor, will you push for the creation of a flexible acquisition fund for nonprofit developers? Thank you.
All right, for this one, you have 30 seconds to answer the question. Rebecca Reinhardt.
So the issue of corporate investors coming in and buying properties, and actually it's a lot of private equity investors that are doing it, is happening around the country. It's a big issue. I'm part of a group called Accelerator for America. It was a group of elected officials across the country, and this is an issue that's being identified in cities across the country, private equity squeezing properties in our city and across our city. So I will look to solutions for that. In terms of a flexible fund, I would discuss that with you.
All right, Helen Gim.
So before I came onto City Council, this was one of the areas that we led on nationally. Then Trump got elected, and that's kind of tanked things. But you know, the idea was to get cities to have first right to buy up before private equity came in, and whether we could buy up blocks of property at lower rates, and then be able to work with our community groups to prioritize development, home ownership, and preservation. So yes to that, yes to affordable acquisition fund, and real partnerships to transform neighborhoods.
All right, Alan Dom.
I would have to learn more about that flexible acquisition fund before I can give you a definitive yes or no. But I do think that one of the options would be, there's down payment monies, and there's also financing terms. It is much less expensive and much more efficient for, if the city wants to do something like this, to lower the interest rates for that acquisition through the buy down. That is the key. That is the key to affordable housing in this environment. You know, our interest rates doubled in the last 12 months. We need to buy these rates down.
All right, Judge DeLeon.
I would look at the city joining in a partnership with various nonprofit corporations whose purpose was to build affordable housing. I think that could be a win-win for both them and the city. And I think that we could get some good interest rates to do something like that. I like a plan like that.
All right. Okay, we're moving into a different topic, and that is economic development. As we recover from the pandemic, the challenges... Damn, my time is up. I love that gong. I just love it. All right. As we recover from the pandemic, the challenges faced by our small businesses have also been front and center. So let's talk for a bit about how we can support them. Our next question is going to be asked by our community partner, AARP, and Linda Bunk.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Linda Bunk, and I'm a volunteer with AARP. Let's talk about commercial corridors. If you agree that the neighborhood commercial corridors are the lifeblood of many communities across the city, what programs would you support, grow, or enhance to ensure corridors are vibrant places for our residents?
All right, great question. And you have 1 minute to answer it. We start with Helen Gim.
Yes, thank you so much for that question. And yes, we all believe that our commercial corridors are vibrant aspects of it. I've made very clear that our Commerce Department occupies 1/4% of the entire budget, and in some ways I feel like that's about as much space it occupies in terms of the prioritization of our city. I would absolutely lean in and see a much more expanded effort that prioritizes outreach and staffing that supports commercial corridors. I have been very clear about the cleaning and greening and brightening up initiatives that was part of the Just Services campaign that we helped lead through City Council, and we're going to take that out and make sure that it reaches everybody. I've also prioritized the importance of setting aside opportunity and equity funds that actually support commercial rent assistance, supports and opportunities to grow, start, and attract small and local Black and brown businesses across the city of Philadelphia. We need to see new opportunities coming up, and the city has to lead it.
Okay. Alan Dom.
Thank you. We have 16 bids in the city. Center City District and University City really don't need our assistance. The other 14 bids, many of them do need our assistance, and I'd be there for them and assist them. But we also have commercial corridors that are really not doing well. And think about it, they're very old. The demand for goods and services today are different than 15 years ago. The internet has taken over, so we have to reposition a lot of these corridors. And what I'm seeing all across the city is that restaurants have become the anchor of many of these business corridors. So we need to put more restaurants, more entrepreneurs, especially in the Black and brown community. We need to create opportunities for entrepreneurs and more jobs in all these business corridors. That's why people will go out. They'll go out to eat at a restaurant, and then they'll go shopping. You can't have a great meal over the internet. You can have excitement when you're going out to eat in that neighborhood. And that's key for these corridors. So I would advance entrepreneur opportunities for restaurants in these corridors.
Judge DeLeon.
So there's two parts to this situation. The first is you ask the question how to make sure that they thrive. That's the first aspect. Then the second aspect is how to make sure that we continue having businesses come into that neighborhood. So this is where the chambers of commerce come in as far as my administration is concerned, because I would fund the chambers of commerce for these particular type of purposes. First, how to keep a business thriving. The thing is that we have to show certain businesses they need to be able to know how to keep their inventory, how to maintain their books. Those particular type of aspects I would give for free to those businesses through the Chamber of Commerce. The other is as being an incubator, to teach a person how to build a business up. I've done that before. I've seen it done at Wharton and Temple University, and I would make sure that these services would be available to the small business for free.
All right. Rebecca Reinhardt.
So first, we need to make sure that all of our neighborhoods have safety and are clean. Those are core city functions, and through my public safety plan, with an emphasis on services into the neighborhoods most impacted by the violence, we will make our city safer. In addition, on cleanliness, we have to make our city cleaner. That means trash pickup that's on time. That means cracking down on illegal dumping. That means street sweeping. Those things will help neighborhood commercial corridors. In addition, I think we should be looking at a program such as the Business Legacy Grant Program that's been successful in other cities across the country. This is a program that gives grants to businesses in neighborhoods where rents are rising to keep original businesses in the business corridor. That's the type of way that I will lead as mayor. Thank you.
All right. Our next question is going to be asked by another community partner from the Urban Affairs Coalition. Arun Prabhakaran is going to ask that question, and you'll have 1 minute to answer it. Arun?
Good evening, everyone, and thank you, candidates. While Black and Latino Philadelphians account for 47% and 17% of the city's population, they own only 5% and 4% of businesses. What barriers do you think prevent more of our Black and brown residents from becoming entrepreneurs, and what would you do to address them? Thank you.
All right. We begin with Alan Dom.
Thank you, Arun, for that question. In schools, I would teach from K through 12 financial literacy, technology, and entrepreneurship in our schools, K through 12. And in high school, I would allow kids to go to school 4 days a week, on the 5th day work in a job, get credit, get paid, get a summer job. And in this environment, the employer will say, can you come in, Alan, Tuesday through Friday, after work, 3:30 to 6, we have a labor shortage, and can you come in Saturday? Gives kids the opportunity for 4 different job experiences. Cristo Rey High School at 17th and Allegheny does this. They graduated last year, 99% of their kids from high school, and of that 99, 100% were admitted to college. But in addition to that, because we need more entrepreneurs across the board, because Leon Sullivan said in '72, we have 2 to 3% black and brown entrepreneurs, and today we're not much better than we were. I would teach across the city in 25 locations, maybe the CDCs could help me, entrepreneurship, technology, and financial literacy, including home ownership across the city to adults.
All right. Judge DeLeon.
Well, the situation is even more dire than that. There's 2 black and brown businesses per 1,000 people in Philadelphia, whereas there are 22 white businesses per 1,000 people here in Philadelphia. So the situation is that we have to nurture and grow more black and brown businesses. Now, I gave you a little key to that when I said that the chambers of commerce would be involved, both the Hispanic, the Asian, the Black Chamber of Commerce, and the normal Chamber of Commerce, because they would have to be incubators for the building of businesses. Also, the empowerment zone that we have here in Philadelphia, the empowerment, because I need to put money into these particular organizations to build businesses, because I need to have the businesses built for my tax base and for the employment of the people of Philadelphia. So this is why it's so important to use those chambers of commerce.
All right, Rebecca Reinhardt.
So I will lead a specific effort to increase a minority business participation at the city level, in addition to growing the number of black-owned businesses in our city. We must be very intentional around this issue. So I will partner with entities such as the Enterprise Center that is providing technical support and equity to minority businesses to help their work scale up. In addition, my team will make sure that the Office of Economic Opportunity is within the mayor's office, reporting right to me, and there's going to be a goal of 40% of city contracting goes to minority business, not women-owned, minority business. I think that's the way that we start to tackle this issue, and what I will accomplish as mayor.
All right. Helen Gim.
Yes, so I also agree that everything has to change. None of this is by accident. A lot of this has been purposeful, whether intentional or not. The outcomes are very clear. So everything does have to change. It means that the city has to lead on a bold initiative utilizing procurement and contracting. I'm also not naive enough to think that the city doesn't screw this up automatically. So I support Black economic development agencies and entities such as the Enterprise Fund and the work that's been done with the Innovate Capital Growth Fund that have to lead independent of the city, and that the city needs to be a key partner in making sure that we support that. I believe in incubator spaces, support for that. And then finally, just want to say very quickly, I have a strong belief that the city has to lead a guaranteed subsidized jobs development program for individuals and neighborhoods that are hard hit. This is not something that is going to be just a workforce development pipeline straight into the basement of Comcast at low-level jobs. This is about giving people an opportunity in their neighborhoods to create their own creativity and development as well.
All right. Great. Thank you. All right. If elected mayor, what would you do to sustain increased funding for the range of critical, affordable housing and community development programs in Philadelphia that have received Neighborhood Preservation Initiative bond funds and/or federal recovery funds that will be ending? We will start with Judge DeLeon.
So I gave you a little preview of one of the things that I would do to get this money. But my arithmetic was off when I first gave it to you, so I'm going to give it to you with the correct arithmetic. There are 22,000 illegal lockouts in Philadelphia each year. There is a bill, an ordinance, 9-116, that gives fines to the landlord that illegally locks an individual out. That fine is $300 a day. If you took the 22,000, multiplied it by the $300, multiplied it by the 10 days, you would get $66 million that I would have my law enforcement officers going out. I would prosecute and get this money, and this money is what would be utilized for the purposes of housing that we're talking about here today.
Rebecca Reinhardt.
So I know the city's budget from being the budget director for 5 years. And as city controller, I put forth a plan to utilize the American Rescue Plan money, the $1.4 billion that the city got. And I recommended to the mayor to use a good portion of that money for affordable housing, basic home repair type programs. As mayor, what I will do with the NPI Neighborhood Preservation Initiative funding is look to the programs that are working, and if they're working, then we need to continue funding them. And if they're not working, then that's another story. But the idea is to use that NPI money, which is a bond issue, actually several bond deals it will be, to continue to fund this important work.
All right, Helen Gim.
So as somebody who really leveraged in and supported the Neighborhood Preservation Initiative funding that helps support so much around our rent, our eviction diversion program, housing stability, and others, the next mayor cannot just do things based on the existing money that we have. That's the difference between me and a lot of other people. I do not just look at the money that we have and just limit my options there. I am looking at that money as seed money to attract more investments, because if this work actually makes a difference in people's lives, I want everybody to be funding it as well. That includes nonprofits and other partner agencies. That absolutely includes philanthropic partners. I want to leverage in our banks, our big lending institutions, to say this is an economic development initiative. This is not charity. This is not basic help or supports. It's not government services. This is a transformation of our city. As mayor, I'm going to make sure that we lead a big investment that expands opportunities and not just limits us to the money that we've got.
All right, Alan Dom.
I'm going to take councilmanic prerogative, even though I was a district, I was an at-large member, and I'm going to not exactly answer this question, but I'm going to share with you, to go back to Arun's question. You know, the black and brown business formation in Philadelphia is the lowest on the East Coast. Lowest on the East Coast, by far. And when you look at jobs created, I'm going to go back to that comment I made earlier. U.S., it was 29% paid less than $35,000. Philadelphia, it was 60.9 paid less than $35,000. Minneapolis has 28 corporate headquarters. We have 3 of the top 20 that are corporate: Comcast, American Airlines, Allied Security because of the Guard Service. $35,000 to $100,000 paying jobs, we have half of our suburbs: Devon, Valley Forge, and Malvern. Look at business taxes for a small entrepreneur. In New York City, it's 16.2. Second highest in the country is Philadelphia at 15.9. The third highest in the country is California at 8.8. Chicago and Boston are 7. How does a black and brown business function under that tax burden?
All right. Judge DeLeon. Oh, you did. Who did I miss? Anyone? Okay. I did pretty well up until now, right? Keeping track of all of you all. All right. So we have a final question. So this is it. In closing, what does equity mean to you? And if elected mayor, what would you do in your first 100 days in office to advance equity? We begin with you, Rebecca Reinhardt.
Equity means giving each neighborhood in our city what they need in terms of service delivery. Equity means reversing past practices in how services and funding was allocated. Equity means looking at the status quo and making changes. As city controller, I showed how many of our city services were inequitable. Trash collection, 93% on time or better in Center City and Northeast Philly, while North, West, and South Philly, on-time collection 65 to 75%. That is today. So we need to change this. As mayor, I will lead that transformation in service delivery for our residents. Thank you.
All right, Rebecca Reinhardt, thank you. Helen Gim?
Yes, so we've had a lot of conversation tonight about housing, commercial corridors, vacant lots, and many other things that impact this broader community. And absolutely, I want to take this moment just to say it's not just about where we live, but how we live. I hope that I can take a moment to talk about a big area that hasn't been touched on today, which is about schools. And to me, public education, public schools have to be part of the economic development of the city of Philadelphia. It is absolutely anchored in how we're going to grow our tax base, how we're going to see the health and well-being of communities as community hubs, and how we're going to need to transform our city for the future. I have put forward a big initiative for a $10 billion over 10 years borrowing plan in combination with the city of Philadelphia to actually modernize and bring our schools into the 21st century. We're no longer going to have schools that shut down, but actual schools that are community hubs and anchor families and neighborhoods, because that is what this room actually believes in. It's not just about lots and properties. It's about how we're going to become a community and a home.
Okay, all right. Alan Dom.
Well, equity means a lot, but for tonight I'm going to share with you that it means to me dramatically moving the needle on poverty, which we haven't done in 50 years. And, you know, it would be easy for me not to run for mayor. I'm only doing it because I want to see dramatic change in the city. I have 3 goals for the city, and you can hold me accountable. Over the next 10 years, I want to take 100,000 people out of poverty. I want to create 100,000 good-paying jobs, 35 to 100,000, and I want to bring 100,000 new residents into the city to help us share that tax base. But equity to me means giving every opportunity. It means teaching in our schools. If we had taught in our schools 15 years ago financial literacy and home ownership and technology and entrepreneurship, we'd have a different city today, a very different city. And so it means to me dramatically changing, taking people out of poverty. Not all these programs I'm hearing to keep people in poverty and make them comfortable, but as your mayor, I want to take them out of poverty.
Judge DeLeon.
Well, equity means just what it says, equal, that everyone deserves life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So on day one, I would enact my local incident management system to drastically reduce gun violence in the city and crime. And that system is a system of processes and procedures that allows the city government to combat gun violence by enabling the necessary responders to work more effectively and efficiently together to manage the root causes of gun violence. Now, this is a plan that I put together specifically for the city of Philadelphia. It hasn't been used in any city in the United States to combat gun violence, but I am an incident specialist. I am trained in this area. All the people in my departments would become incident specialists under FEMA, and they would be trained. And we would attack all the problems in this city and solve them.
All right. Well, we have come to the end of this mayoral forum. Special shout out to PhillyCAM for providing video and sound, and HYY for joining us here today. We hope this forum helps you understand more fully each candidate's proposals and their vision for the future of affordable housing and community development in Philadelphia. Let's work together and ensure that everyone in our city has a place to call home and can enjoy a high quality of life. Let's give our candidates a round of applause for joining us here today for this discussion and for all the partners that helped make this possible. Thank you so much.